There's a problem.
What's the problem?
Only one microphone recorded.
Only one microphone recorded?
Yes. So the 4-person conversation you had, 2 people had a microphone on them.
That's a problem because it was a really good conversation.
So we have a decision to make. You can pick up, basically, 2 people sound like we sound right now, and 2 people sound like they're on a bad Zoom call. So I haven't listened to it yet. How good was the conversation?
It was incredible.
So
it has to stay.
Has to stay.
It was, we can't, we could have them come back here and we could try to re-record, but it's not going to be the same conversation. It's worth it to me to release something that half of it sounds like a bad Zoom call, because we're just experimenting here on this grand podcast adventure.
This is what happens when the producer leaves the room.
Yes. I cannot focus on being intensely in conversation and checking mic levels.
Fair enough.
It's too hard.
So do you want to tell the people what they'll be hearing today?
Okay, to set the table for the conversation that I am going to invite you into today with my friends, Lori, Corey, and Bethany. So several years ago, we read a book together called Untamed. And there's a metaphor in this book about the author reflecting on how wild animals in a zoo are tamed to be so against their actual nature. And the writer was reflecting on how this wild animal was doing these tricks, chasing a pink bunny when they were actually quite fierce and dangerous in their natural state. And then the writer went on to reflect how this was a good metaphor for her in her own life, and how she really did follow along with cultural scripts of what it meant to be a woman, and how finding her path in terms of carving out a true and beautiful life in doing what was right. And so it was a book that all 4 of us really bonded over, and then it since has exploded into a place for us to all converse about, here we were, in our teens and early 20s, and we were very much, some of us were very much feminists and, embracing this idea of the empowerment of women. And then we built this life, and we start to see midlife the cracks in what we have built in terms of, we were all for empowering women out there, but it's like inside of our own life, where were we honoring our own voice? Where were we living a life, an empowered life? So it's been just this really beautiful space to kind of take apart and build back together, like where the cracks in what we were building was, what wasn't true, what wasn't beautiful, what wasn't loving. And so that has been the context of our relationship over the last couple of years. And I thought it would be so fun to just invite them to the podcast and have a conversation about some of these things, because it's been priceless to me to process my own contradictions. It reminds me of a quote I came across of the other day that, you can find out what you actually believe rather than what you think you believe by watching how you act. You simply don't know what you believe before that. You are too complex to understand yourself. And I'm grateful for Corey and Lori and Bethany, because it's been a place where I can start to try to pay attention to myself and understand myself and see the contradictions on what I say I believe and how I behave. So excited to introduce my listeners. Thank you for coming back to the podcast, or coming here for the first time, whichever it is. I'm excited to introduce you to my Untamed sisters. So I have 3 friends sitting here at the podcast table today, and it was I don't know when, but a while ago that we started a group chat that was called Untamed. We had all four of us had been going through the book Untamed, and we have explored so many topics of conversation on that thread. And so many times when the conversations get me the most excited, I'm like, this has to be recorded and shared. We've all been on our own individual journeys and have found threads of similarities around so many topics. So I'm going to turn the microphone over for each of them to introduce themselves. I've asked them to choose just a couple of words so you can associate their voice and who they are and who they're talking as you get to know them through this conversation. So I will pass the mic to Bethany, and Bethany will introduce herself.
All right, guys. I'm Bethany. And on our chat thread, we're not known by our personal names. We have pseudonyms.
Pseudonyms.
Mine is Freedom Warrior. So, to introduce myself, I am Freedom Warrior, a midwife, a mom of 7, and a Jesus feminist. Let's go, Lolo.
I am Lori, and I'm known as the Justice Warrior. I'm an Enneagram 8, a midwife, a hypnotherapist. I think justice, probably empowerment, really is my jam. So excited to be here.
Yeah.
All right, Corey.
All right, I'm Corey. My chat name is The Chaplain. Compassionately curious, mom of 3, Air Force veteran, and spiritual advocate.
So let's get this party started. The first thing I want to talk about, I know it's been some time since we've been through the book Untamed, but I always love the quote that people don't, in regards to people, sometimes you don't remember what they said or what they did, but you remember how you felt around them. So I want to know from each of you, we're going to go around and I want to know, like, right now with no book in front of you, just the memory of how you felt in response to the conversations brought up in Untamed. And I'm going to pass the mic to Lori.
Okay, so I think it's divine that you just called me first because that brought up just a great response, even just listening. Like, I'm all choked up already. So honestly, I think we were all together at the beginning of my separation, and I was sharing some really hard things. And you quoted, I think, Glennon Doyle in saying, everyone should be able to come to the table as they are. And I think really that's what led me on to some of those books, and then maybe even got us to reading Untamed together. I think maybe it was one of those experiences. So I remember sitting across the table from you and you just seeing me, not really knowing all of my story, but I felt seen. And you labeled some things for me that were really hard to label, some realities in my own personal life at that time. And so I think for me, it really was the beginning of feeling like I can come to this table as I am. I'm loved here. I'm seen here. I'm not having to be something I'm not. I could come raw and vulnerable. And so I think really that for me was the beginning of this group. Yeah. And right at the beginning of my own journey of really letting a lot of things go and making really hard choices that really were my life of nevers. I remember my sister saying to me one time, like, don't say never. I'm living my life full of nevers. And I really feel like that's where I am. And at the beginning of that journey of saying, I will never do this, I'll never do this. And then finding myself doing this never and that never, was you bringing that quote to me and just seeing me where I was, almost giving me permission to do the hard thing. So
Permission to feel it and then take action.
all of it, like just all of it in general. I really think you were the first person just to say, wow, I see how hard this is. And like, you have the right to come to the table however you are and to be loved there. Like, really, you were the first person to just unapologetically say that. So for me, that was the start of this friendship or this kind of, squad here, but also that beginning of just that quote, which led to Untamed, and then all of us kind of being in that together.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Bethany, what are the feelings that you still stick out? All this time has passed since Untamed. So much has happened. What sticks out feelings-wise when I say Untamed?
You mean the book or the actual group?
Both.
Well, at the beginning, when Corey was listing all of the words, I was curious as to, and I love that phrase because it reminds me of Julie. She says, I'm curious. Which word gave you the chills, right? Like as Corey was speaking, which word? And the last word, like when she said, I have a voice, as we're speaking those affirmations over ourselves, like that one chills head to toe. And I think for Untamed, whether it's the book or the group, or the word, I think what it is it's like the Sia song, Bird Set Free. Oh, I wish I had the lyrics right in front of me. But basically it's talking about, having a story to tell. And we all have stories to tell. And the four of us, we have stories to tell every day. And so our group is a space that we can come with our stories, and we have a wide open space for our voices. And we know that like in that space, and I felt this way in the book as well, but like in that space, we're free. We're going to be accepted. We're going to feel connected. There's no judgment. Like that's priceless. So, Untamed to me is like a freedom. And then in a space like this, where we have friendships that, where we empower one another to use our voices. It's a safe space. I mean, truly priceless.
So interesting how there's a theme in both Lori and Bethany's responses about finding voice. Corey, I want to hear the feelings that remain about the group, about the book when I say Untamed. What sticks out to you? What are your feelings on that?
Yes, I would say definitely, I've been in, as you all know, I've been in theology school for the last 2.5 years. I feel like a lot of the group for me has been a safe place to bring to you guys weekly. Look, y'all, this is what I'm learning. This is what I'm learning in school, and this is what I've been processing, and this is what I've been, quote unquote, deconstructing and reconstructing in my spirituality and in my faith. And, Lori, when I was listening to Lori and Bethany talk right now, Lori, the word that jumped out to me was Lori said separation. And I know that, she was honest, came vulnerable with that a word, but I'm thinking, even for that word for me is what Untamed has been in the group is being able to have a safe space where I'm separating the voices that have spoken to my life, that have not empowered me and that have made me feel small. And Bethany says that a lot, about feeling small but separating those voices between God's voice and then my own inner intuition and, being able to, honor my intuition and honor God's voice and separate, all the other voices out. Anyways, that's what Untamed's been to me is a place to be able to be safe with each other, to process that. And some other words, as Bethany was talking, she talked about, she said connected, non-judgment. And I would say our voices are free there. And I mean, I feel honestly like I could bring to the table anything with you all and not feel judged whatsoever. And I can honestly say I've never been in a group of women that I have felt that way. And so I feel like even just us, it's what we have in the group too. It's like, oh my gosh, I just want to be able to unleash this into every female space that I know. You know what I mean? And try to recreate it because it's beautiful, just about us supporting each other where we're at and honoring each other's voices. And then, you all being able to say, no, Corey, like that's not God's voice, or, that's not, that's not who you are. That's not, check back in with yourself, honor your inner knowing. And so, that's what Untamed has been for me.
That's what it's been. I loved hearing that from each of you. And it has to have a follow-up question. The follow-up question, and yes, I'm so glad you pulled up the lyrics. That song has to be discussed. Yes. So before we jump to that song, but that will be the next point, is I want to know, we have all discussed a complicated relationship that is evolving and changing that we have with our voice in the church. And you reference every single one of us had a theme of like finding our voice and stepping into that. And I want to know what the greatest obstacle to you is. And I'll start with you, Corey, and then we'll go around to finding your voice in other spaces. Like each of us have just honored this treasure, this sacred space of safety and non-judgment and empathy and support and camaraderie. What is the greatest obstacle outside of safe spaces to you finding your voice?
I would say for a long time, and I've shared this with, I feel like in counseling spaces I've been in, therapy, the word that keeps bringing up is I've always felt misunderstood. I've always felt misunderstood. And I think that, okay, what was the question again?
I'm talking about obstacles because you were reflecting, and it was a common thread with what Lori was saying and what Bethany was saying of safe space for your voice. Mm-hmm. And so I automatically went to and you were like, I wish other women's circles could have this.
Yeah.
And so it made me wonder, what's the obstacle? Like, what is the obstacle? If you could put it into words, your opinion, your experience, what is the obstacle for having those safe spaces within the church and within your community and with your neighborhood? What is that? What is the obstacle? I'm just so curious, your perspective.
Well, again, like I was saying, I think I've always felt misunderstood. But when we create safe spaces where people are seen and on a deeper level, when we're just, truly stepping in and empathizing with them and listening well, you feel seen and you don't feel misunderstood. And I feel like that's kind of where I've, kind of been at in my life. I've just felt so misunderstood, but truly I feel like y'all have healed, y'all have healed a part of that. And I no longer feel misunderstood. Like I feel safe within myself and I feel connected within myself to where I don't really care if people misunderstand me.
Wow.
I truly
That's
can
powerful.
honestly say that. And that is what y'all have healed.
Will you pour that in my cup? Would you pour not caring
I'll
about being
drink it, too.
misunderstood? Can I just gulp it?
I'll take a dose of that.
Yes.
Lori and Bethany, do you have anything you want to follow up about obstacles to finding your voice outside of, you remarked that this is a safe space that we've created together, we've co-created. What are the obstacles outside of this safe space to you finding your voice?
Well, I have to agree with Corey. I think for me as an Enneagram 8, like being misunderstood is like one of my worst fears. Mm. And if we go back to, if we kind of take this back to the book and the pink bunny and the, the caged cheetah or whatever.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so for me, what I realized is like, okay, we're all kind of chasing maybe a different pink bunny, but it's all those spectators that line up day after day after day and buy the ticket, right? That it's like, what if you do just jet, right? Like, what if you run out into this completely untamed world? Like, what if you just take out open to the open wild? Like, will they chase you? Will they shoot you? Will they feed you? Will you be alone? Like, there's all these things. And so I think being misunderstood, but that I think for me personally, I think selfishly, I felt like maybe the pink bunny was always the same, right? Or if we wanted to put it in context of the church, like it's the church, right? And it's oppressing me or, but it's different, right? We all put it on ourselves, this belief. And for me, it was like conforming. It was like, don't conform to the world. But then I was also conforming to this idea of what this like beautiful, feminine, holy, righteous woman looked like, or mom looked like, or wife looked like. And in that, I lost all autonomy. I lost all sight of my gifts.
Yeah.
I could no longer even go inside of me where the Holy Spirit is to dwell, right? Mm-hmm. And say, who am I? What am I supposed to do? It was just all these spectators watching me chase this bunny. Mm-hmm. And as long as they were there cheering and lining up and buying the ticket, then I was just going through life feeling understood. But then you wither. Right. And then that realization for me, like my word that I just keep coming back to, is I was literally withering in that cage. And then it's just courage. I think for me, this space, when you have people where you can come and you don't have, because the idea is like, there's not a judgment. So therefore I don't have to worry about being misunderstood. I can come as I am.
Right.
Right. And so for me, the church and for a lot of groups that we've been in, that's not possible. it always comes with, well, if you're doing X, Y, and Z, then you're welcome to my empathy. You're welcome to my love. You're welcome to my connection. You step outside of that, and then you notice that all of those things are gone, right? And then you grieve those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's much easier just to go back to conforming, because who wants to relive grief over and over and over? So I think the misunderstood piece really, a lot of ways, is your worth outside of yourself, right? If you see your worth outside of yourself and all the things in the checklist that you're doing, but when you can come to a space knowing the worth is within you and your own gifts and your differences, then to me, that's untamed. Like that's a place where you're no longer chasing the money. You're free to go to the wild, and you're going to look to your left and your right, and there's going to be those few people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you, like I said, then you're not worried about being misunderstood or the worth of the spectators. Like, you feel free to kind of run,
Yeah.
but otherwise, right? Like, how many women never leave the space?
Mm-hmm.
How many women never stop chasing the pink bunny? Like, for me, that's my biggest thing in midwifery, with therapy, trauma. Like, it's a trauma response.
Yeah.
Mm.
Really. I mean, that's what all this is. It's a trauma response. So my therapist always says, like, the world is run by wounded children in adult bodies.
Mm.
Wow.
And I believe that. That's why we need books like this. That's why we need spaces like this, because you don't come out of a trauma response without intentionality,
Mm.
right? And so women are never, or people are never going to kind of come into that whole living, which to me is the epitome of the gospel, right?
Yes.
Like, whole living in who the Lord created you to be. But it's literally impossible with some of the institutions that we have in place, because we're just all living in a trauma response. So
Yeah.
I could go on forever, but
I loved hearing that.
Wow, but we stay on the track because it's safe.
right,
Right?
absolutely.
So
Safe.
I'm still working through this. I think part of the issue for me has been worried that I'm going to hurt someone. In exercising my voice in certain regards. And one thing that we're all in therapy, or we've been through therapy, right?
Mhm. Right.
That's another thing we haven't
Exactly.
No shame, right? I'll give you her number. But when I expressed that to my therapist about being worried about hurting someone by sharing what I needed to share, she was pretty adamant that it's not really about the worry of hurting them. It's the fear of being rejected by them, that you won't share that. And that I'm still working through that. I still feel like my whole body says, no, I'm worried about hurting them. So that's a difficult thing for me to, I guess, to grasp. Okay, voice. What was the?
So this is a perfect time, because you referenced the song by, is it Sia? How do you say it? Sia? Okay. What I think is so funny is I heard this song while I was running, and I was like, oh, Bethany needs to hear this song. This is like Bethany's theme song. And then I sent it to you, and you were like, it's my absolute favorite. So
number one on my playlist.
number one.
Yeah.
So talk about the song. We've pulled the lyrics up. I'd love to just hear about what the song means to you.
Okay, so am I allowed to read from it?
Absolutely.
I thought there was like a copyright thing.
The producer will edit it out if it's
okay.
wrong.
Okay. So I may not. Do you want me to read the whole thing or just parts of it?
What you want us to hear.
Okay.
I want to hear what matters to you about that song.
I think I guess if it's the chorus, there's a scream inside that we all try to hide. We hold on so tight we cannot deny. It eats us alive. Oh, it eats us alive. Yes, there's a scream inside that we all try to hide. We hold on so tight, but I don't want to die. No, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. So then it says, and I don't care if I sing off key. I find myself in my melodies. I sing for love. I sing for me. I shout it out like a bird set free. So what that means to me is, as long as we're holding on to our story, and as long as we are playing the part that, feels safe, we're not free. Like we're not setting other people free. We're just, like Lori said, we're just playing the part. Like no one grows. We don't grow. Other people don't grow. Like what is this life even if we can't express? And what was it you said, just, fully living out God's purpose for our lives. And like, how does he receive glory from us being our smallest selves and like putting so much of ourselves under, staying small, not sharing, not growing, not being willing to think outside the box, or giving our whole lives over to service and sacrifice and whatever. And then it's like, what's left? Is that really glorifying God? Like if a tree is dying, or if a tree is as large and beautiful as it can be, like which brings God more glory? But we're telling people,
and women,
especially women, especially mothers, gosh, like be your smallest, give everything you have to everything around you. Die. Are you serious? Like,
and I'm gonna just butt in real quick. I got everything on Lori's and what Bethany's saying. I feel like it's all kind of coming together too, and maybe moving into maybe the next part of the conversation. I hope I'm not jumping ahead, but all of us, here, are Christians. We identify following Jesus, and and a lot of us have been wounded as far as what it means to be a woman and what it means to be in Christian circles. I mean, in church hurt, just the church or the church world. And so, when Lori's over here, she was over here talking about, the gospel and, bringing your whole self and, and me trying to deconstruct some old beliefs I've had, especially around womanhood. I'm just thinking, and then what Bethany's saying, I'm sitting here thinking, Jesus was the Son of Man. And you break that down, Jesus was the Son of humanity. And what makes a whole person? We're mind, body, and spirit. And it's like when we tell women, to be small, sacrifice, die to yourself, you're telling women to die to parts of themselves and hide themselves and make their voices small and not be heard and silence them. And Jesus came to redeem that. If he is the Son of humanity, he has came to redeem all that in us. And so what is, when Lori was talking about living out the gospel, embodying the gospel is embodying that wholeness of bringing your whole self to the table, not hiding yourself, not hiding your voice, not silencing your voice, your gifts, your passions, your callings, your dreams. What all of these things are birthed inside of you, through the Holy Spirit. Through, if we're made in his image, I mean, hey, show up with your whole self. If Jesus is the Son of humanity, show up with your whole self and be seen because he understands, you'll never be misunderstood. Anyways, and I think that, and so what Bethany and Lori were talking about, I don't know if that's kind of segueing into your next topic with the church, but
it's so perfect because one of the questions I wanted to ask each of you all, because I know we have that in common, and I really appreciate your gracious, truthful articulation that we have common hurt within the church community that we're working through. I want to know from each of you, and you go when you're ready to talk, what tools, how do you heal from that? What's been the resource that you've needed most to heal from that?
So I'll just say that, what I said a moment ago about the tree withering and that whole analogy, I participated in, that whole, what's a great word?
Worldview, belief system.
Yeah, participated in the belief system, shared it, was an advocate,
we all did.
That was
like an enforcer.
Yeah, we all did.
I mean, that's what it feels like now looking back,
Internal
right?
misogyny. We all had internal misogyny.
Yeah, And yeah, I would
Enter
just
my
say that part of the process for me has been just learning to value myself, forgive, give myself grace. But part of that was, that was the track. That was the whole cheetah and bunny thing. It was like, stay on this track. It works really well for so many people, for women to stay on that path, to sacrifice everything, like that just props up a whole every system, right? Like it makes so much sense for everyone else. But yeah, I guess learning to value myself. How do I feel in this? And one thing that Julie has brought up to me several times is like, would it be fair if you put all of that on any one person in your family besides yourself? No, it wouldn't be. Like, I would never want that for my daughter.
Right. Right.
So, just like, okay, so you value your daughter enough. You want her to value herself enough to not live in that small space, to not wither. Why don't you put that same value on yourself? It's like, we really have to ask ourselves these hard questions.
Yeah.
And I'd love that you brought that. That's such a great tangent. And as we circle around the microphone, I'd love to hear your answer to both the original question of how do you heal from that hurt? What is the process? What does that look like for you tangibly in your life? But I'd love to know, where do you think that begins of not valuing yourself? Like right? Like preventatively, right? Going forward, like when was it? Like what systems or what ideas or what lies or what, like, where did that start? Because I think that's so interesting for each individual answer because it's so relatable. Like we're so much more connected than we remember. So I'd love to hear from you, Lori, on both of those or something else completely. If you want to talk about something else, if that moves you to something else completely, I'd love to hear from you.
No, I'm over here just bubbling over with all the things.
I could feel the bubbling from this side. I was like, Lori needs to talk.
No. So let me just take a second. Come back to my body before I start rambling. So I have so many things. So from the healing standpoint for me was definitely therapy. I think, and for me, piecing it together with my faith and what's okay and what's not okay was like, you have to leave the childish ways behind, right? To come into this whole self. And I'm always going to go back to trauma because I think, like when she was talking about the lyrics of the song, when you're really working with someone through trauma and you talk about a recent trigger, like, okay, I was so hurt by this, particular situation in the church or with my spouse or whatever. And you start breaking it down and you get into childhood. And what it comes down to is I might die. If they don't love me, I might die. If they don't see me, I might die.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not safe, so I have to act this way. I'm not safe, so I have to conform. So I think for so many of us, it's simple things that happen, unresolved trauma, that becomes our habits. And then we carry it into this world until we eventually say, the scales are removed and we say, okay, no more. I don't want to wither. I don't want my children to wither. I don't want my marriage to wither. I don't want my purpose or passion or, I love this word wither right now because I don't know, it feels so real. And the energy from that word for me is so huge right now. But for me, it goes back to trauma and literally the belief that when you break it down comes back to some of the things that resonate in the song. For me, if I personally go back, I believe, like, this is something that's been big for me, is like, when did I get to the point where I believed I was small? Because I'm an Enneagram 8. Like, I've always taken up a lot of space. I've always had courage and boldness, and I don't know. Like, I don't even remember even in school or in high school worrying what people thought about me. Like, I wanted different shoes or whatever. So, like, how did I go from that, wanting to be different, wanting to be unique, not caring, to literally, I can't even trust myself to make a decision about the groceries I'm buying? Like, how does that happen? Where is that breakdown? And so for me, I think it was like, what I believed was the ultimate success or ultimate love, right? It was to get married, have babies, make this beautiful home, which are all great things. They're things that they were the desires of my heart. But in it, I literally lost all autonomy. There was no more of who was Lori. And I think Beth and I were talking about this before we started recording, this idea of, now that you put it out there for me in a podcast, it's out there, right? I can't bring it back. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. But the reality of people love me for the performance I gave. And so now when I look around and I'm lonely or if I'm lacking love or connection, it's it's my own fault because I lost all autonomy. I gave it all away. I gave it all away to chase the pink bunny. And then when you find yourself in a hard position and you have to pivot and go into the Neverland, right?
The Neverland.
Then where are you? Alone, full of grief, right? And so for me, I would say healing, going back to where did it start? For me, it started with this idea of what I had to be. It started with conforming. A lot of that was religion, right?
Yep.
If I wanted to be a good mom, I'd bake all my own bread. I would never spend any more of my husband's money than absolutely necessary, right? Just literally made myself a self-made martyr, right? I just be content in whatever these little poverty lines and, these lines of alone and desperation and want and I was made to feel or I don't even know I was made to feel or I chose to feel. That's up for debate. I don't know yet. But that all of that was selfish or, right? I wasn't willing to sacrifice enough or do enough. Now I look back and I think, oh my gosh, I was working magic.
You're
right?
working magic.
Yeah. So for me, I feel it was tied to religion. It was tied to this idea of wanting to be holy, wanting to be righteous, wanting to be seen, wanting connection. And in the midst of it, I didn't even know myself. So therefore, how can I expect my husband to truly love me? He doesn't even really know me, right? Or my friends or whatever. So healing for me would definitely be a space like this, absolutely necessary. You have to have a place where you can come and learn to be yourself. And not be completely alone. But also just, therapy, back to trauma, childhood trauma, those beliefs that led me to that chasing the pink bunny really started in childhood. And then I just continued to build on them and build on them and build on them. So then you do find yourself I'm almost 45, living nothing but a trauma response. So where can you find pleasure or purpose or passion in a trauma response? You're barely keeping your nose above water, right? And so for me, in midwifery, in hypnotherapy, as a mother, I just want to see, especially women, but all people just set free from that. Bust all the walls down. And if it means you have to be who you are or have a little too much fun or, curse a little too much or whatever you need to do to kind of let all of that emotion out to find who you are, I'm here for it.
I love that.
Yeah, your standard can go to hell. Let it go.
Yes.
I'll be standing right here with you, and you know what I mean? And we'll find our way there because really so much of it, we think we have righteousness, and it's just pleasing a man, right? So part of me feels really grateful. I think we could all say this, right? Gratefulness that we can see. It doesn't mean it's not hard. I feel it's still really hard. But just gratefulness to be I don't have to earn it. I don't have to earn it. It's given to me. I accept it. I take it. And then I'm going to help other people or stand with other people or love other people or connect other people versus it being, to me, which is a very prideful, shallow place of if I'm doing all this, I'm going to church here. I'm, witnessing on the sidewalk here. I'm making my kids fresh bread. I'm homeschooling them. I'm doing all these things. But there's no connection. There's no love. It's a checklist. So at the end of the day, I look back and I think, okay, my mouth is a little more spicy, right? My clothes might be a little different that people, I'm kind of on the edge of whatever, screw what people think. But, all those things people can judge me from the outside, but I am so firm in my purpose, right? I know that I'm making a difference. I know that people are feeling loved. I know that people are feeling supported, empowered. Empowered is my word, right? And so I know that's happening. So therefore, it does become easier, I think, to say, I don't care anymore. right? I don't care if you misunderstand me. I don't care what you think. I mean, I'm just getting there. Like, so I don't want to.
You've got the crack of light on the path that you're trudging.
Oh, right. But I mean, I would say every day I'm anxious about being misunderstood. Like I'm avoiding the grief of one more lost relationship.
Yeah.
One more lost opinion or favor, whatever. So I don't want to put it out there like I'm just don't care, because I very much do care. But it's there, like you said, the crack of light. So Corey, I kind of took the mic from.
No, you're fine. It's great.
I want to hear what came to mind.
Yeah. So, I mean, just piggybacking off what Bethany and Lori said, I mean, I think all of this does stem from childhood. You know, the voices that have spoken in our life and said, this is who God is. This is what a woman is. This is what a mother is. Is really defined and shaped. Okay. So for instance, like, you know, growing up in, church Christian circles that were very male dominated, you know, and then reading the context of God's word in that perspective and seeing, you know, women's voices weren't elevated. They weren't elevated in the church. They weren't elevated, you know, at home. They weren't elevated, you know, in the circles that you were in growing up. And so for me, I would say it would be going from one patriarchal structure, you know, one kind of, and then putting myself in as much as I, you know, loved serving my country, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. You know, I was a veteran, very proud of that. There was, being a woman in the military, you really had to, and going back to what Lori said, you really had to conform to stay safe. And you really had to kind of prove yourself, especially and I was in a particularly male-dominated field in the military, weapons loader. I mean, out of a flight of like 300 and something, you know, airmen, I mean, there was probably like 6 of us women. I mean, that's basically how it was. And so it's like you really had to die to yourself, die to and hide parts of yourself and your femininity, you know, and really take on this role of, you know, and so I think going from, you know, one structure, religion, that shaped, you know, this male-dominated to another heavy patriarchal male-dominated structure, coming from that into another, you know, going back into the church and church spaces where women's voices were elevated. Only time I ever felt like in church I heard a woman's voice elevated was on Mother's Day. Why is it okay for a woman to get up and preach on Mother's Day but silence her voices the other 364 days in the year? That's not okay, and that's wrong, and it's unethical, really. I mean, it's really unethical, and it makes me angry. And so I think, you know, a part of really trying to, like Bethany was saying, value your, you know, and honor your voice. And part of that, like what you're doing, your work with hypnotherapy, Lori, is it healing the inner child and giving that inner child a safe space and a safe place. And be it practicing self-kindness and self-compassion. And, you know, and I had kind of said earlier, you know, that internal misogyny, all of us had it. We were all shaped by misogynistic patriarch cultures, whether at home growing up, in religion, Christian churches, Christian spaces. We were all shaped by that. In the military, I mean, as much as I, you know, love serving my country, it's there. It's there. And then you go into certain corporate places. I mean, it's just not, it's everywhere. And so it's, you know, really trying to, you know, heal that inner child, you know, and for me, it was healing the inner child and honoring her voice and really trying to heal womanhood, and how a woman is. And I'm just sitting here over here a minute ago, Julie, and I looked up and I saw your book up there. It said the other half of the church. Yes. The other half of the Imago Dei's voice has been silenced. And so I think even allowing God and the Holy Spirit to come in and heal the other half of the Imago Dei in your own self, you know, that's been about all that work for me. So, and then now I'm on, like, you know, the empowerment and women supporting women, because I don't ever want to be in a place now where, you know, I silence other women's voices and make other women feel small and unappreciated and pushed to the corner because I did that for so long to myself and to other women. And I refuse to do that BS again.
So,
So good.
so I just want to say I love Corey's passion. I wish you guys could see her face and her like glow on her eyes. Like I wish y'all could see that at this table. You can't see.
You
that,
can
so
feel it.
Yeah,
I can feel it.
I'm like,
So I just want to like take a minute to like just acknowledge that. But also I think
thank you.
one of the things that really, and I really would love to hear Bethany talk on this.
Yes.
Kind of segue, but this idea of like, right, women or this Jesus feminist or
Yeah.
this idea of, women being feminist and it being so negative. But like you said, it's a voice, it's an entire part of the church that's being silenced. And
Yeah.
I just want to tie this all into being safe because
Yes.
when women, especially, do not feel safe, we go into our masculine.
Mm-hmm.
Because in order to be safe, we have to give up femininity. We have to give up these beautiful pieces of our womanhood.
Right.
Right? To be safe. And the system is not really set up the way that we like overwork mothers, underlove mothers, underappreciate mothers, like all the things that we do, silence mothers. Like it pushes women into a masculine space where they have to kind of put it all on their shoulders, right? And take care of it. And like we lose more femininity. So it's like the church believes they're protecting this feminine, right? By X, Y, and Z, but really we're pushing women into the masculine. And then we wonder why marriages are failing or relationships are failing or there's lack of connection. So like, I think Bethany would have a lot of great things to say about the masculine and the feminine and operating in those places. Maybe not kind of segue, but I to me, like just hearing you say the word safe and then acknowledging that feminine and masculine and just how it's so wrong. It feels like this ball of yarn that we've tried to like put back together and preserve, and it's just a big fat mess, right? And really it all needs to come apart and then let's put it back together. But it's so much work.
Well, can I just say something real quick, Bethany? I'm sorry, I don't mean to take the mic from you, but when you're talking, this is what I'm thinking about is, I think for me, the biggest thing that I had to really, when I was going through theology school this past two and a half years, the biggest thing I think that really kind of broke the quote unquote deconstruction. I know that word gets tossed out around a lot. It's got bad connotation with it, but really it's the work of, removing blind spots and all these things, was, in scripture, the very beginning in the garden with Eve and how so much has that, I feel like has hurt women tremendously from a theological perspective, spiritual perspective, biblical perspective, how, Eve's the one that ate, and she's the weaker sex. And she, Adam didn't step up and wasn't the man of his house and all this stuff. And it's like, then this whole unraveling you start seeing in the garden, with, it's saying that, and this is the biggest thing, it's saying that, and now I need to pull up, as I don't want to misquote it off the top of my head, but God told Eve that her desire would be for her husband and he would rule over her. That was a consequence of the fall. But I am convinced clear as day, like that is not God's heart. God's heart is not domination, power over, but that's what happened. And it's like, that's what we see in scripture, but that has been the baseline, I guess, or that has been the foundation for us to build all of our theology and biblical womanhood off of, is that our men are supposed to rule over us. And that's, I'm just going to say that right now. Spiritual advocate, chaplain, in the making. But that's that's theology, and that's where I'm at. And it was never, God, we are never to rule one over the other, and that is power over. And don't think that was God's heart, and that was God's intent. And I think all about becoming whole and embracing both the feminine and masculine. The other half of the church is, healing that and is honoring, both in unity and wholeness and reconciliation and harmony. That is the gospel, that is bringing wholeness together. And, and so unfortunately that whole mindset, perspective, and belief system has pushed women as the weaker sex, and made it all, this domination thing.
It hurts both.
Yes, and it hurts both, right?
Obviously hurts women.
Sorry, I had to get that off my chest.
No, I love that you got that because it hurts both. I love that. So good. And I can't help but, feelings are the being an Enneagram too. Feelings are the breakdown through which I see every conversation. And I can't help but want to go to anger. Like, what is the role of anger? Because to me, one of the most healing turning points, one of the most healing crossroads is getting in touch with my anger and not feeling like I'm working my way through the book, Rage Becomes Her. And it's like, what a gift it is to have anger. It's a God-given emotion that something or someone has been trespassed upon. Someone has been treated wrong. And as my experience, all I can ever speak to is my experience in the church. And my experience is I learned to be a good girl, to never, ever be angry, to be liked, to not be angry. And some of the most pivotal changes in my life is me getting in touch with what I'm angry about and owning it, not projecting it out, not passing that anger on, but owning it and owning what is mine to own with it and what is mine to change. Because it's this, I could go on and on, but I'm curious. I want to toss the microphone. I would like to hear more from Bethany. And I'd love to hear from both of you too, following, like, what role has anger, getting in touch with your anger, if at all? Maybe it hasn't. And maybe that's just my experience. I don't want to project my experience, but I'm curious what role of getting in touch. Because when I hear Corey talk, it's like, I am finding anger in me and what's changed my research and my curiosity and my decisions. So I'm curious to know the role of anger in the healing process for you.
Okay, so, man, I don't want to talk forever.
No, please do, because I feel like we've taken the mic a lot.
When Lori said, when she touched on the word feminism or feminist, and I thought about, just being a woman's advocate, just being an advocate for women.
Mm-hmm.
And that process for me probably started in the work of midwifery and being in those vulnerable spaces with women, just to get a bigger picture of how women are treated in homes all over the place,
mm-hmm.
right? So we get a front row seat to that.
Wow.
And within that framework of sacrifice, withering, whatever, people are suffering and we'll suffer all day long sometimes, like as an individual, especially if we think it's what's bringing us closer to God. That's what we're taught. Right?
Yeah.
But when you see someone else suffering that you've grown to love, like you walk in a house and kids are sleeping on, thin mattresses with no sheets, smells like pee or whatever, and the laundry's backed up for days, and there's not a whole lot of food in the house or whatever, and the mother has a blank stare. She can't take care of herself. She can't take care, she's struggling. I mean, things change. And it's like, wow, we've used the gospel
right
to create this. Like, she thinks she's growing closer to God,
Doing his work.
Yeah, glorifying God in this. Like, and children are a blessing, and like marriage can be a blessing, and family systems can be beautiful. But like, we've propped up this whole thing and made women feel like, in order to this, sacrifice more, be less, don't have a voice, be content, like all the things that you were saying. So and of course in our work, we see that to the very opposite, where women are cared for, but they have a voice, right? Like they're saying, this is what I need. This is how I feel taken care of. They're using their voice. So it's not all like that.
Right.
But I will say that when you see that, you get angry and you wonder why. Like what have we done as a culture? What is the church doing to make women feel that this is the right way. And how do we get out of this space? And so my anger comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's using that to push forward and to help women find their voices
Mm-hmm.
and to help women feel like they have choices. Not supporting a system in which women believe that that is correct. Like Corey said, like, let's identify the bullshit theology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We need to trash that. But again, it's like when you talk to people, and they can't hear you, you only go to, and I'm talking about people within the system that have those same beliefs, like,
Mm-hmm.
Don't listen to your heart. Like, that's a whole
Theology system.
Don't listen to heart is evil and wicked.
But Jesus lives there.
Trust.
But don't listen.
But
Yeah.
Jesus lives there. Right.
Right.
Listen to it, but
Your
Jesus
heart's
lives
wicked. It can't be trusted.
Heart is wicked.
Yeah.
Don't go there. But
But let's never mind the verse that says, guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life.
Right.
Let's never mind that verse.
Support
Yeah.
the system.
That doesn't support the system.
Feminism for me and the anger comes from, wow, it's not just about being an advocate for women and their voices and like let's help women feel taken care of. And we can only do that for so long, but it's like, how do we help them amplify their own voices? How do we help them connect to themselves to know what they need and to know how to ask for it? And to be
Empowered.
yes, to have
in
the
that
belief
space.
about themselves that they're worthy of asking for what they need.
Mhm.
And you can't, you need a cleaning lady? Get a cleaning lady. Go, work. And unless most people feel like they can't work because then they're not a good wife and mom or whatever. But you need a cleaning lady? Work, get a cleaning lady. Or tell your husband, I'm drowning. I need a cleaning lady and yesterday. Or whatever it is. Like, what are your needs? Feel worthy to ask for what you need. That comes from a belief. Like, how much do we value ourselves? How much does society value women? People don't even know what they need. They don't even feel worthy of asking.
Mm.
But women are. They're drowning. They're
Yeah.
struggling. We are. I mean, we
Yeah.
we are. We talk to each other all the time, right?
Yeah.
We're the same. It's like, Julie will share things with me, or Corey, or Lori. I got nothing for y'all. Same. That is our conversation.
Yeah.
We struggle.
Same.
Yeah, we struggle together, and it's like, oh, it's okay to struggle, but all right, where are we going from this? Like, what need do you have? Whether it's an emotional need or a physical need, what need do you have? And then how can we ask for that? How can we help meet that need?
Yeah.
That's what empowerment is. That's what feminism is.
Right. Right.
And I love that you brought up same, because it's a beautiful way. I'm going to read this in closing, and then I would love to hear from each of you on a final closing remarks. Same. I still haven't figured out how to keep my shower floor clean or make morning smoothies or respond to stress calmly. Same, my friends tell me. A love note of sorts. Maybe the world doesn't need us to cut down on carbs or make more money or waste less time. Maybe instead it needs us to reach those who feel alone in their messy homes or difficult relationships or unresolved issues. To impress less and connect more. To share one simple message. Same. That's what you all give me, and that's what I hope this gift is an offering to anyone who needs it. Same. So I'd love to hear from each of you and anything you'd want to say in closing.
Well, as the Enneagram 8, the challenger, I think there's a lot of beauty in that same, right? That you feel seen. But also, let's just challenge that shit, right? Why does it have to, we have to look at each other and be same? Let's just do better, right? Let's find comfort. Let's feel safe. Let's feel, let's not have to have anger to get what we want, right? Like I have no problems with anger. Anger is a very comfortable emotion for me, again, as an 8. Like I can rage and anger all day long. But like last night, I wept for the first time in front of my children for minutes in the car. I've always stuffed that. But I was like, you know what? They need to see
Amen.
that my heart is broken in pieces. They need to see that I'm sad. They need to see that I'm burdened. They need to see that I'm like worn out and overwhelmed in this moment. And so I guess the same, there's such beauty and then there's tragedy, right? Like in both of those things, in the same and in the anger and in the rage. But gosh, like, can we just come with all of it? And all of it be comfortable? And then it be a place where it's not have to be like, I'm co-signing your tragedy and you're co-signing mine, but like, gosh, let's do better. Like, let's create safe spaces.
Yes.
And let's create places where, I mean, most of us have 6 people in our house. It should be a breeze to keep clean. I really want to use the F word right now.
It's safe.
Here comes my emotion. Why the F do I even have to hire someone when there's 7 people in the house? We could knock this crap out in 15 minutes if everybody took a station, right? Like, so for me, and in being comfortable in anger, I would just love it to be more of the places where we can have all the emotions and they're all welcome. And we don't have to get to the anger piece. Because I feel like for women, it's like we have to get to the anger piece and the movement piece and the ambition piece to get what we want, to get what we deserve, right? To be in a place where we are just who we are and our worthiness is who we are versus getting it outside of us. So, like I said, I love the beauty in that and the same, but also that challenger piece of me is like, okay, but let's just change that. Like,
You don't want to stay there.
So you want to transform the anger into action.
Because it's right. It's such a fine line of like romanticizing something and changing something and being content and thankful. I mean, it really is. Like I said, there's beauty in it, and I want to acknowledge both those pieces. But my instinct as the challenger is to be like, no, like there shouldn't be shame.
Like we're not staying here. We have to.
Yeah,
we have to fix this.
Yeah, right.
Circle back to some of Julie's other podcasts, the nonviolent communication. Like, you know, in anger, we might do all these things, and anger's not, there are no bad emotions, right? But just being able to recognize our needs and communicate them, right? Like that's the foundation. And then who do we have in our lives that are safe? Who receives us when we come to them with a need? There's a quote by Dr. Nicole that wrote, she's a holistic psychologist. She said, "Show me an adult who's quick to anger and complains often. I see years or decades of unmet needs coming out through behavior." So I think it starts with us. I think it starts with, just valuing ourselves, knowing our needs, being able to communicate those needs, and having, looking for those safe people. Like, to hell with all the people who are turning their backs when we approach them. They don't have the space, for the hard things. It's like you're only going to go to that person so many times and be rejected and then not go to them anymore. Like, and then for us, like, let's aim to be the safe people that can tolerate the hard spaces. So I appreciate that about you guys. I cannot say enough, like, how valuable your friendships are to me. I think it's like a 40s perk. Corey?
Almost. I'm almost there.
We're just rounding up.
She's a baby.
She's the baby at the
I'll
table.
give you a couple of my years. I've got plenty.
I'll give you a couple.
There's a grief that comes with, wow, it took me this long in life.
Oh, so true.
To have this. But then a celebration that we have it. Like major chills. Like from here on, we have it. We know how to get it. We know how to give it. Hopefully we're learning both. But I just love you guys.
And just think, like, my prayer is that someone listening is probably torn wide open with the reality that they don't have that space.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that they would realize it's possible that if they're genuine and authentic in who they are, that there will be someone to receive them. And if not, we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're here. And if we can turn this 4 into 8 and then 16, and then they turn it into 16 more.
No, I've done a lot of therapy to have limits on my friendships, Lori.
Right.
We cannot turn it into any. I'm closed. I've spent a lot of money in therapy. Like, I'm just joking.
Example, right? That
I'm
someone
just-
will
I'm
look
just
for
joking.
there for.
I understand.
Yeah.
The vision
Right.
of it, I absolutely wholeheartedly. But I also
Yeah.
had to throw it in because
No, yeah, Jesus only had a few friends, right? Right, I'm with you on that. But no, I mean, like,
the vision, I absolutely.
yeah, right. And
Yes.
so that is just it, because it's like that permission. I think we just that permission to not wither. Like, if you are withering,
Permission to not wither. Did we just get a title?
there's
For the-
nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing. Not a marriage. Nothing that the Lord would want you to wither.
Right.
Preach.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Preach.
So, permission to find your safe space, your untamed space, your wild and free space.
Mm.
And just confidence that the people will come. You know? They will. It's hard, and there's a lonely space, and there's lots of grief, but it's there.
Yeah, definitely. I guess in my closing remarks, I would say, and I'm thinking about a conversation I had with somebody recently, and we were talking about how, how we kind of hide behind, like, well, particularly when my internal misogyny was was kicking in a few years ago. Yeah, I would, hide.
I am.
Right. My unhealed, womanhood. And it's still, healing. I think we're all still in that space where we're healing and
Just beginning.
unburying parts of ourselves that were buried because we had to in order to survive, and stay safe. And we're unburying and uncovering and untaming,
Preach.
But so I was thinking about a conversation I had with somebody, and we were talking about how we feel like when we look at certain women or we see certain women, our hearts break, because I've been here, where we feel like our defense mechanism is to hide behind certain biblical passages or scriptures that we have, and we would just regurgitate them. Like, we haven't processed it. We haven't, critically thought through them. We haven't even, allowed, our own intellectual responsibility, our own, work of the Holy Spirit in our own heart and mind. We've just regurgitated what, quote unquote, man has taught us. And so I would just say, and so, okay, so let me go back. So, I was talking to somebody about this earlier this week, and we were talking about how, we've been there. Like, we just will hide behind certain passages. Because it makes us feel safe, because that's all we've known. But really, we're dying. Like, we're miserable. And I am convinced as us four mothers sitting around this table, and we look at our children, and when we see our children unhappy, it breaks our hearts. We just want our kids to be happy and healthy. And I'm convinced that is what God looks at when he sees us and he sees women. He sees his daughters. He wants us happy. And bullshit theology out there, it says God doesn't want you happy. He wants you holy. No, that's crap. Okay. God will hold our pain and our sadness because he sits with us as a child, as we would do with our own children. When our children are hurting and grieving and sad, we will sit with them, we will acknowledge their feelings, and we will love them through it. But God wants us happy. He really does. And, so I would just say my challenge to people that are listening, from a spiritual perspective, I'm working through this, that God is more kinder, more compassionate, more inclusive, and more loving and caring and considerate and all the things that we have maybe been told he's not, or been made to feel that he's not, or been taught that he's not, or we've seen that he's not. He is all those things and above than we have ever dared to imagine. And I would just challenge, if anybody's feeling that space where, they're trying to prop up this belief system, if this is what the church has taught them, or this is what they've learned, in their childhood about God or theology or scripture, or this is whatever, and you're miserable. And maybe you're in this tension phase where you feel like this is crap. Like I don't feel something's not right about this. Lori, you've said that. Bethany said, we've all been there. There's got to be a better way. There has got to be more than this. And I would just challenge you to sit with that and just know that there's a tribe of women out there who has gone before you and has done that work. We're still doing the work. And honor yourself and, have self-compassion and self-kindness and, look at yourself, look inwardly at that child and know that God is looking the same way at you and wants you to be happy and whole. So that would be my takeaway.
Okay, so you've all heard our thoughts. Julie, what are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? What are my thoughts in closing? More of this. More of this. It's interesting because in my mind, before y'all came, I was like, I did not want a list of 27 questions that I felt like we had to be boxed into, but I also didn't want it to be so free for all that it's like, where do we go? Because there's so much we could cover. But it's like, there's just so much richness and togetherness and connection and hearing hearts and hearing minds. And more of this. We've had so many conversations on the Untamed thread, and we've had some live get-togethers, but there's something otherworldly about hearing your hearts and your pain and your thoughts. It's like, I don't have words. All the words are not good enough, but it's energizing and it's connecting. And it's so beautiful. And I can't help but think too, as like y'all are talking, I'm like dancing around in my brain. I'm like, one of the things I'm truly shocked by with the podcast is that I've had like husbands of my friends, my husband's friends, husbands listening. And it's like, that surprised me. And I literally dropped the meanderings in motherhood because I was like, I don't want any story to be so pigeonholed into my trials and my stage and my silo of my life, because really I am just intoxicated with the idea we are all so much more connected than we ever remember. And it's like all of our stories are so much bigger than our transient identities as mother or wife or teacher or whatever. And so I was so intrigued that college students were listening and some friends of my husband's were listening. I'm like, this is so fascinating. And it's actually my heart because our stories matter. Like our stories and the struggles that we have had to find our voice within the church and within our communities and with our families matter. And it matters to a 20-year-old college student, and it should matter to a 45-year-old husband, because we're all better by understanding each other better. And so I hope, maybe it's just one person, but I hope it's a seed of understanding that wasn't there before. And even if that doesn't happen, it's enough that it brings so much hope and peace and energy to hear your hearts. So thank you for sharing your hearts and pieces of your story today.
But I see tomorrow. You see the darkness, but I see the spark. You know your failures, but I know your heart. You're a young spirit, an old soul with a new chance to grow. I can't start to compare your love to the size of your heart. If people saw the road you've been down, they would know.